Welcome to the intro to the CTCLA podcast. My name is Lance Penland. This is my just amazing co-host, one of my favorite pastors and preachers in the region.
Don't lie about me on the first episode.
I'm not lying.
Okay.
You all know him, Pastor Sean Fenner.
Yes.
And we are excited to be here with you as a part of the City to City LA team, where it's our goal, our mission to start and strengthen churches right here in Southern California. Sean, how you feeling being here on the intro episode?
I feel good, man. I'm excited. You know, I think there's a need for a podcast like this,
sir.
And we're going to talk about it a little bit. And I think a lot of people that have been introduced to City, they know that we plant churches, but some things people don't know about our organization is we also revitalize churches.
Yes, sir.
To make them more gospel-centered, and we help raise up leaders within churches, because we find that churches that are newly raising up leaders, that there's a revitalization that happens within the church, and that often leads to new ministries, new opportunities. We've seen nonprofits planted out of that.
Yeah.
We've seen church planting happen outside and inside Southern California. So I'm excited because City to City has been a blessing to me, and I think that these conversations will be a blessing to others.
Totally agree, man. It's our hope to create a space where people are encouraged, uplifted, they learn something, and maybe even get introduced to some leaders in the region that they haven't had a chance to meet yet. So I think a good question, Sean, to start with is why church planting here in Los Angeles?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people might say, well, I've seen a lot of churches. You know, I know streets where there are 3, 4, 5, 6 storefront churches. But here's what I want to remind everyone. When you think about the state of California, right? And then specifically our region in Southern California. But if you think about our state, that's over 10% of the population in America.
Wow.
Like stop, pause, think about that for a second. And then think about the fact that like on our best day, maybe 10 years ago, we were at like what, 24,000 churches. So you're trying to fit millions of people, right, into these spaces. And the reality was, even if we filled every church a couple of times on Sunday, you're not even reaching like 3 to 4% of the entire population.
Wow.
I think it's even worse in Southern California, as you've seen like an urbanization. You see the reality of like being priced out of communities. You find that there aren't actually many churches for the communities that are being kind of developed, rebuilt, modified. And I think it needs to happen because we found, Lance, that planting new churches reaches new people.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of the statistic is churches that have been planted in less than 5 years, they reach new people for the gospel. More baptisms, more salvations, more reaching out to friends. People are more bold for the gospel. And that's what we need to see in California. If we're going to see like a renewal, a revival, an awakening, I mean, everybody's got a tradition they grew up in, so everybody's got a word for it, right? But I think if we're going to see that, then we need to plant more churches.
Yeah, to your point, man, after about the first 10 years, a church becomes more focused on those who they serve,
right,
as opposed to being evangelistic. And a new church, it doesn't have any members.
Yeah.
So they're super evangelistic. But there's also this tension of churches have been closing at a pace that they've never closed, like in the history of American church planting, right?
Absolutely.
All the statistics pre-COVID were that people were less inclined to go to church. There's no real pressure to be culturally Christian like there once was. And all the statistics seem like people are going to church less and less. They're identifying as Christian less and less. But what excites me about that, I think it means that we're primed for revival.
Right.
And I think as a church planter, as someone who walks with church planters, I want people to know that the harvest is plenty.
Yes.
That there's an opportunity for people to be reached who, A, have not heard the gospel.
Yeah.
People who maybe have de-churched, walked away from the church. People who are like, hey, the church did grandma wrong, or I didn't like how the pastor did this or did that, and have a lot of church hurt. And it's really cool to walk with gospel-centered leaders, help them just grow in their gospel fluency, equip guys, maybe do some fundraising alongside pastors so they can reach those who are least, last, and often we identify as lost in the greater Los Angeles area.
You know, it's interesting, Lance. I love that you bring that up, because what I'm finding is, though Christianity seems not to have as much of a cultural stronghold or relevance, what I actually find is that people are more open to the gospel than they've ever been. You know, we were just talking about it. One of my guys that's on our staff team got married recently.
Okay.
and he's our worship leader. And we had started a ministry out of Long Beach Community College. And what I found being on this community college was I found that there are a lot of people, actually young people, that are open to faith conversations in a way that I don't think people realize they're open to. And what we find with new churches is that when a new church pops up in a community, it's almost like it's positioned immediately to be missional to that environment.
Yeah.
And because they know that they need to reach people, and because they value people deeply as souls, they're not thinking like numbers, budgets. They're just thinking like, we want to live on mission to see the gospel move forward. You actually see people like go, wait, this is church? This is what Jesus is really about? And we've seen that over and over and over again. So I agree with you 100%. I think we are, use the word prime. I think we are prime for an awakening, a revival, a renewal to happen. I even look to like what we've been seeing like Pentecost Sunday this year. You see like, Baptized Southern California.
Yeah.
They got together and worked with hundreds of churches. And what you found was like, I think it's at like now 10,000 people reported baptized on one Sunday. You look at that and you go like, well, what is God doing, right? In the midst of all this like de-churching, Christianity's not relevant, people are hungry again for the gospel. And I think it's because we're rediscovering what the gospel really is.
Yeah.
That's one way I'll say that City to City has deeply impacted me, is it's reminded me, Lance, like what the gospel is in the simple elements of truth that Jesus brings. And that is relevant to the change that I think young people, especially in our generation, want to see. And so that for me, I think we are primed for that for sure. Now, talk to me a little bit about, not just planting new churches, but like, what's like the revitalization thing about?
Well, you mentioned it, people who are indigenous to a community, who are on mission right where they live in the neighborhood that their kids go to school at. And we have existing churches right here in South LA who maybe through the years, the senior leader got older. Maybe the mission has drifted away from gospel centrality, and they're not as connected to the theological mission they should have or the city vision that they should have. And it's our hope to really equip legacy churches here in South LA, right? Yeah. Who have maybe a great history, a robust history of doing ministry, but they need some new skills and some new tools to reach people in our current context. And it's really exciting to be able to walk with these legacy leaders who are maybe in a season of transition, and they're preparing to hand off the church to a new and emerging leader, to walk with these new emerging leaders in our learning communities, to prepare them to take the baton, to walk with them as they're maybe a year out to 1 to 2 years in of taking over that church, and really how to even shift a church in their strategy, in their mission, their vision, their values, which really provides a platform to breathe life, not only into that church, but into that neighborhood, onto that street corner. And we've seen it happen. A lot of our revitalizers have gone through our 2-year incubator program, and we've seen transition happen in their church like crazy.
Incredible.
Where the church was really on a pathway to maybe closing its doors, and now we're seeing lives being changed, people being saved, young people coming and just rushing to the altar. So I'm really excited for what we've seen with revitalizers and what's to come in the greater Los Angeles area through church revitalization. It's my opinion, Sean, that ethnic leaders often get afraid when they hear church planting because they think we're trying to tell them they're going to lose something or do something different. And it's not just that we want people to leave your church and start something, but we also want to do or believe that God wants to do something new in your church.
Come on.
And we would love to walk with you through a revitalization process.
And I think, like, if we could be honest, some of that fear is valid.
Yeah.
And it's valid in the fact that there are organizations out there that promise to, like, let us help you revitalize, let us help you build, and they still leaders. And then you're wondering, like, well, I spent all this time, I invested in somebody, and now they're gone. What I love about City to City is that we really have these 3 levels that you've talked about. And so, like, even at the core, you may not be ready to revitalize, you may not be ready to plant, but you have somebody that you can equip that could either draw you through that revitalizing process or get your church to think beyond itself, right? I love, we had a planter that went through our program, our incubator program,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And that incubator program being that place, like, when you think of an incubator, it's like what gets a baby healthy, right? Where an egg hatches and makes sure it's got enough oxygen, the environment's right, because you want it to have the best start that it could possibly have. And I remember a planter that was actually planted out of our church going through there, and this idea of he was like, I want to plant pregnant. I want to plant ready to think about the next church that we're going to plant.
Yeah.
And that's what City to City is all about, is empowering these leaders to bring revitalization to what needs to be revitalized, but then also to think like, but what's missing and what's new that needs to be planted.
Yeah.
Because I think that the conversation usually tends to go to one or the other, right? It's like, oh, we just need to revitalize or we just need to plant. But what you're saying is we actually need both.
Yes, sir.
And we need legacy churches that are revitalized through strong leaders that recognize the gospel. Because I think what's happened at times, and I love like our founder, CEO, Larry Acosti kind of puts it like this. It's like passing the baton. And sometimes you pass it too early. Sometimes you hold on to it too long, right? And there are churches where you have pastors that love the community. They just maybe held on a little too long.
Yeah.
They're not sure how to raise somebody up. You talked about like mission drift. We get away from like go and make disciples. Remember Jesus, God himself being like, yo, go make disciples, teach them to obey my commandments, baptize them. And we get so focused on church programming or what our board wants, right? And what we find is that all through these programs, whether it be the learning community, the incubator, even the city labs that we offer, where we're drawing people in to understand, like, what role does, urbanization have within church planning? What role does like trauma have within church planning? And we're just equipping leaders to understand, like, we're here for you. And what I found with City to City is it's really an organization that is here for you.
Yeah.
Has that been your experience as well?
That has really defined what my experience is. Is as I walked out my leadership, I experienced discipleship.
Wow.
I've heard it said like this, that leadership and discipleship are like parallel train tracks. And as you're walking out your church planting journey or your church revitalization journey, you're also put in spaces where you can find not only brothers, but also mentors, right? A unique opportunity with City to City. All of our planters are assigned a coach. And they say if you're coached through your church planting process, you're exponentially, I should say it like this, when you're coached in your church planting process, the level of success or the measure of success, the hope for success grows exponentially.
Wow.
So your chance to succeed as a planter, it really skyrockets. And we put you not only with a coach, but we also have guys who are experts in the field at what our training modules are about to come and spend time with you, sit with you, eat with you, share with you. Sean, I often hear you talk about pontificators or people who have great opinions.
Right.
I grew up in the No Child Left Behind era, right? The California high school exit exam where you just have to make sure you check the right box on a test. But we have guys who not only have head knowledge, but they have the lived field experience of planting churches, maybe a failed church plant, and then getting equipped and getting the proper training in the right community, maybe the right tribe. And now they're successful church planters. And they're walking with guys saying, hey, this is what I did. This is what I didn't do. This is what I maybe see you walking into. This is what I would encourage you to avoid. And what do mentors give you? They give you speed. They're able to tell you, hey, if you go this way, this is what's going to happen. Wow. So you know if you can run full force that way, if you should slow down and say, maybe we need to think again. As a planter who now has the privilege of being on the City to City team, but previously I was in the City to City incubator as a participant.
Wow.
It was guys like you, Sean, Enrique, who's the lead trainer with City to City, who really helped me to birth out what God had given me. And I don't think our church would be reaching our city in the way that we are if it was not for those brothers and those mentors who walked with us along the way.
I think, wow, that's incredible, Lance. And I'll just say, I've seen the growth in you.
Yeah.
And I'm learning and growing from you. I love that you mentioned that, like, pontificators, right? Because you always wonder, like, when people write stuff like that, it's like, what's that phrase people say? Those who can't do, teach, right? Like, we don't want that to be the reality of church planning, of City to City, of the people that are training and developing. And what you find with our trainers, our coaches, our mentors, these leaders, is you find people that are practitioners. They've been through it. I remember one of our coaches saying, when I first came to City and got engaged with City to City, I went through a planning process, and he said I felt like I was shot in the back, left dead on the beach. And City to City came in and did triage and saved my life. Like literally, he's like, I'm healthy. I have these scars where I can give testimony and share with people like, these are all the things I did wrong in the process because along the way, I wasn't centered in the gospel. And bro, that brought tears to my eyes. I'm like, shouldn't that be every person's story? Whether you're a leader starting a nonprofit, a leader that's going to be leading within a church, you're revitalizing a church, you're planting a church. I mean, when we follow the gospel, what we find is we find health, we find longevity, we find peace in the midst of trial. Like we should be having that as we're doing these things. And that's what I found in the community of City to City. You're right. Like you're not going to get people trying to tell you what to do that aren't willing to do it. You're not going to get people that don't want to walk with you. You're going to get people that, like you said, eat with you. Man, dinner time. Let me tell you, it goes down on dinner time on the incubator. You get good food, good people, good conversation. And then what I love is like, I remember I was in a meeting with you the other day, and one of the planters texting you on the phone, and you're answering questions, talking with them. You're not serving in any official role. You know, you're a hub leader. You're leading out in the IE. You're doing these, and you're like, let me help you. Let me walk with you. Let me give you resources. Bro, to have a community like that, that's the gospel. It's not just love God in others, and then we get to actually live that out.
Yeah, it's not church in a box. Do what I did, follow everything my way.
Right.
But it's, hey, man, I'm a friend on the journey.
Come on.
And let me walk with you, and we can process this together.
Yep.
And what are you sensing? What are you seeing? Here's some feedback. So it's not fog, lights, and a big screen, but it's gospel centrality.
Come on.
It's finding your identity as a son who is affirmed and loved by God. You're not planting a church for God.
Yeah.
But you're getting filled by the Spirit and planting a church from God.
Wow.
And I really think that's at the heart of what we do, training and equipping planters to start new churches right here in Southern California. Sean, we're pretty deep into the pod, man, but I just wanted to ask for people who are connecting with us on this intro episode, is there just one thing you could say, man, this was an experience with City to City I had, and I think it's worth sharing for guys who are considering walking with us, considering being on the journey. Just anything that you could say, man, this was the thing that really impacted me as a leader that you could share with us.
Yeah, I think, I loved your experience in coming in as a planner. I came in as a revitalizer. So I took over a legacy church in the middle of a pandemic.
Wow.
And
hold on. If you didn't have gray, you went gray doing that.
That's why I keep it short on the sides. The gray's coming in, right? But what I would say is this, like, I came in when my pastor basically said, like, hey, I don't know what to do in this reality. And I had thoughts and ideas. But what I found was my coach, as I went through this, Tommy Colonin, actually was able to walk with me and guide me. He's out in Tampa, right? But experiencing some of the same things I was experiencing, having transitioned to Legacy Church as the youth pastor, which I had originally started as, and he was able to guide me, coach me, walk with me. I remember specifically a crisis moment where I'm like, man, I think this is going to break this transition. And being able to call him and him being like, look, it's 10 o'clock over here. But he picked up the phone and he's able to walk with me through this crisis. I think for me, Lance, understanding that I don't have to live the gospel on my own was a game changer. I think so many leaders in so many contexts, from a planter to a revitalizer to just a church ministry leader, often thinks that they got to do it on their own. And what I found with City to City is the whole truth of the gospel, that it's not just me and God, it's me, God, and others, and that I can let those people in to my crisis, to my pain, to my sorrow, and they can remind me like, hey, Sean, you're a son of God. He loves you. He's for you. He's not against you. He's not going to leave you or forsake you because the pandemic came and the health department's knocking on your front door and you guys can't do services indoor, outdoor, in-home. I had no idea what I was doing. And just to be able to pray with another brother, walk with another brother, and get advice on what God did in his transition, it was a game changer for me. So I think what people are going to find in City to City is that gospel centrality in the reality of community through those practitioners that you talked about. And not practitioners that are like, okay, for my course, $999 over 3 weeks. But like the pricing for this stuff is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like,
in a good way.
yeah, buy in to own,
Yeah.
like little, right?
Yeah.
Because we want people to show up. We want them to be invested. We want that. And to see what comes out of this is like, this really is about building the church and building the kingdom of God. So let me ask, Lance, what are people going to get from this podcast?
Well, I think first and foremost, you'll understand what it means to be centered in the gospel as a church planter. Mm-hmm. Where you clearly understand there are some gaps that you may have, there are some things that you may lack, but Jesus fills in those gaps emotionally for you, mentally. We want you to walk away after every episode feeling more healthy as a leader.
Right.
Feeling like you're centered and shaped by what Jesus did on Calvary. I think that's so important to everything that we do. We want to point you back to the finished work of the gospel as it relates to you as a planter. Yep. Because so many of us are pointing people to Jesus, but how often do we pause and center ourselves in that? I heard J.D. Greer say it like this: it's like telling someone about the robust flavor of honey, but never experiencing it for yourself. Wow. So we want to make sure this is a space, it's a place where you can be refreshed, refueled, and centered in the gospel. But not only that, we have some amazing leaders from Southern California and from abroad who will just come in and share their knowledge, their resources, tell some of their journey, even some of their pain points on how God used them to make an impact in their cities, in their neighborhoods, and I would even say in our country. Amazing leaders like Pastor Larry Wackemeyer, who pastored for many years at Light and Life in Long Beach and now does some amazing things with the Free Methodist Church. Dr. Larry Acosta, the list just goes on of guys we have lined up. My friend in New York, Abe Cho, who owes me a steak. There's so many guys who I'm excited to bring on to share, who I would literally pay to listen to these men talk. Yeah. And we're bringing them in just to sit down and hear their journey, their story. And also, I think it's going to point you to a place where you can say, hey, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but I can, as I'm working out on my couch, on the treadmill, in the kitchen, in my car, there's somewhere I can go and hear about what church planting is, what church planting isn't, how to find safe community as a planter, and really scratch that itch when you have some questions, when you have some desires, and when you want to just be pushed as a planter.
That's so good.
So I don't know if I missed something, Sean. What you got, man?
Bro, I love that. You know, my pastor, you mentioned him. He used to say to me all the time, Sean, show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. And what I would say is I think you're going to make new friends. You know, you talked about people like Abe Cho. When I'm around Abe Cho, all I want to do is pull a notepad out and be like, talk slowly. You know, like, let me take notes, right? I think you're going to make friendships. I think you're going to connect with people. I think you're going to build network. I think you're going to understand the gospel better. And I think you're going to understand yourself better. I think one thing I'm hoping for in this podcast is that we would not just teach people more about Jesus, but more about who they are in Christ. Because that's a part of the gospel I think the church often misses. And we find that in community. Right, you see that in the Imago Dei, in the image, right? Oh, there's even a planter in our team.
Imago
Dei Church, right? Shout out to DJ. And so I think you're going to make friends, and I think you're going to go on mission together. And I think these are the kind of episodes where you're going to want to play it over and over and over again. And it's going to be like an archive for the seasons that you find yourself in. I think you're going to grow. It's going to develop relationships, and I think it's going to really support what God is doing through each and every person that's connecting with this and watching this. And our prayer, I think, coming out of this is that you would be more gospel-centered and you would understand more, like, why does God have me here and what does he want to do in and through me? Wow. So I'm excited for that, man. I think if we get that, oh, man, how's the world going to change? What's this generation going to look like, right? What kind of churches are going to be planted in the future? So I'm just excited for conversation. And I'll just say, Lance, anytime hanging out with you is fun, bro. So crazy, yeah, man.
I'm excited to be here with you, excited and looking forward to the various guests we're going to have on. And I believe this is going to be a part of the gospel movement that's coming here to the greater LA area. So listen, this is our intro episode for the City to City LA pod. We want to see you here as episodes continue to drop. You need to like, subscribe, wherever you find us, wherever you see us, send it to somebody, call your cousin, call your grandma. City to City LA pod is here.